Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The early morning sun cast a golden hue over the sprawling estate of Chief Nwoko, one of the most respected businessmen in Lagos. The once vibrant compound now brimmed with mourners dressed in black, their somber faces reflecting the weight of the loss. The air carried the scent of freshly turned earth and incense, the customary signs of a traditional African funeral. Nwoko, the late chief's only child, stood under a large canopy draped with white and black fabric. Her heart ached as the priest's words echoed in her ears, but her face remained stoic. She had cried all her tears in private, unwilling to show vulnerability in the face of the crowd that had gathered. Today was about her father, a man she had idolized for his strength, wisdom, and unwavering love. As the ceremony progressed, Amma felt a heavy hand on her shoulder. Turning, she met the calculating gaze of her uncle, Chief Ebuka. Dressed in a flowing agbada adorned with gold embroidery, he exuded authority. His voice, deep and commanding, broke through the din of the mourners. "Be strong, my daughter," he said, though his tone carried no warmth. "Your father was a great man, and I will ensure his legacy is preserved." Amma nodded slightly, unsure how to respond. She didn't trust him. Even as a child, she had sensed something predatory about her uncle, a man who had always hovered in the shadow of her father's success. The reading of the will. 2 days after the burial, the family gathered in the estate's parlor for the reading of Chief Nwoko's will. The air was tense, the room filled with distant relatives who had suddenly appeared from nowhere, each hoping for a share of the wealth. Amma sat near the front, her mother, Ifeoma, clutching her hand tightly. The lawyer, a stoic man named Mr. Okonkwo, adjusted his glasses and began reading. "To my beloved daughter, Amma, I leave all my properties, businesses, and accounts. She is to be the sole custodian of my estate, guided by my trusted advisors." Before Mr. Okonkwo could finish, Chief Ebuka interrupted, his voice booming. "This is unacceptable," he bellowed, rising to his feet. "How can a mere girl handle such a vast estate? It goes against our culture and tradition. The wealth of a man belongs to his male kin, not a woman." The room erupted in murmurs, some in agreement, others in disapproval. Amma's heart pounded as she stood to face her uncle. "This was my father's wish," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "I will honor it." Chief Ebuka sneered, leaning forward. "Your father was misguided, Amma. A woman cannot lead. You will ruin everything he built. It is my duty to take charge, for the sake of our family." Amma turned to Mr. Okonkwo, who remained silent, visibly uncomfortable under the weight of tradition versus the law. The lawyer's hesitation confirmed what Amma feared. Chief Ebuka had the influence to bend even the most unshakable men. The seizure of the estate. Within a week, Chief Ebuka had moved into the main house, declaring himself the new head of the family. He summoned the village elders, who sided with him, citing cultural norms that disfavored female inheritance. Amma and her mother were forced to vacate the mansion. They found refuge in a small, dilapidated house on the outskirts of the city, a stark contrast to the life they once knew. Amma watched helplessly as her uncle sold off her father's businesses and properties, pocketing the proceeds while claiming to manage the family's affairs. Her attempts to challenge him legally were met with roadblocks. The courts were slow, the system corrupt, and Chief Ebuka's bribes ensured that every door was shut in her face. Amma's mother, broken and weary, urged her to let go. "Amma, we cannot fight him," she said one night as they shared a meager meal. "Your father is gone. Let us focus on surviving." But Amma couldn't let go. She remembered her father's lessons about integrity and justice. "Mama, I can't let him get away with this. He stole everything from us." Ifeoma sighed, tears brimming in her eyes. "Then you must be patient, my daughter. This battle is not one you can win in haste." Amma's resolve. Late at night, Amma sat on the floor of their small home, surrounded by her father's old documents. She pored over land deeds, business contracts, and financial statements, looking for any loophole, any leverage that could help her reclaim what was rightfully hers. As the weeks turned into months, Amma began to understand the scale of her uncle's betrayal. He hadn't just taken her inheritance, he had robbed her of her future, her dignity, and her place in a society that already saw women as secondary. But she refused to be a victim. Her father had taught her that strength lay not in wealth but in resilience. She resolved to fight back, even if it took years. She would educate herself, gather allies, and wait for the right moment to strike. Sitting in the dim light of a kerosene lamp, Amma whispered to herself, "I will make him pay. One day I will make him pay." The fire in her eyes burned brighter than the lamp, a promise to herself and to her father's memory that this was far from over. The transition from wealth to poverty was jarring for Amma and her mother, Ifeoma. Once accustomed to the comforts of their mansion, they now found themselves in a cramped, two-room apartment in a struggling neighborhood. The sound of children playing in the dusty streets and the hum of vendors hawking goods were a constant backdrop to their new life. While Ifeoma retreated into herself, mourning the life she had lost, Amma began to adapt. She knew that dwelling on their misfortune wouldn't change their situation. The struggle to start over. Amma's mornings began early. She secured a job as a cashier at a small supermarket, earning just enough to cover their rent and basic needs. The work was monotonous, but it gave her structure and a sense of purpose. At night, she attended classes at a local university, studying business management, a subject her father had once encouraged her to pursue. Despite her best efforts, life was unkind. There were days when Amma went without food so that her mother could eat. Her classmates whispered about her worn clothes and frugal lifestyle, unaware of the fire that kept her going. She refused to let her uncle's betrayal define her. One evening, as she walked home from class, a familiar car slowed beside her. The tinted window rolled down, revealing her uncle, Chief Ebuka, smirking from the driver's seat. "Amma," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You look well. Poverty suits you." Amma clenched her fists, resisting the urge to lash out. "What do you want?" "I just wanted to see how my dear niece is doing. You know, if you had accepted my authority, you wouldn't be struggling like this." She stepped closer, her voice steady but cold. "I may be struggling now, uncle, but I will rise. And when I do, you'll regret everything you've done." Ebuka laughed, a deep, menacing sound. "Bold words for someone with nothing. Be careful, Amma. Your ambition might destroy you." As his car sped away, Amma stood rooted to the spot, her heart racing. His words weren't a threat, they were a reminder of how far she had to go. But instead of fear, she felt a renewed sense of determination. Chance encounter. Amma's life took an unexpected turn when she met Zainab, a young lawyer with a fiery passion for justice. They met at a seminar on women's rights, which Amma had attended out of curiosity. Zainab's speech about the systemic oppression of women in African societies struck a chord. After the seminar, Amma approached her. "Your words, they felt like they were directed at me," she said. Zainab smiled warmly. "That's why I do this. Too many women suffer in silence. What's your story?" Over tea at a nearby cafe, Amma poured out her heart, detailing her uncle's betrayal and her struggles. Zainab listened intently, her expression shifting between empathy and anger. "You're not alone," Zainab said firmly. "This happens to women across the continent. But it doesn't have to stay this way. Have you considered legal action?" Amma sighed. "The courts are slow, and my uncle's influence is too strong." "Then we'll find another way," Zainab said, her eyes blazing. "You're smart, Amma. With the right guidance, you can outmaneuver him." The power of knowledge. Under Zainab's mentorship, Amma began to understand the complexities of the legal and business worlds. She spent her evenings studying property laws, inheritance rights, and corporate governance. Zainab introduced her to a network of women activists, entrepreneurs, and legal experts, each with their own story of resilience. Through these connections, Amma learned of similar cases where women had fought and won against oppressive family members. She began to see her uncle not as an unbeatable foe but as a flawed man who relied on intimidation and corruption to maintain his power. At the same time, Amma focused on growing her small logistics business, which she had started with a modest loan from a women's cooperative. She named it Phoenix Logistics, a nod to her belief in rising from the ashes. She worked tirelessly, earning the trust of clients and reinvesting every profit back into the business. Within 2 years, Phoenix Logistics had grown significantly, handling contracts for small and medium-sized businesses across the region. Amma's name began to circulate in business circles, and she was invited to speak at events about her journey. Confronting the past. Despite her growing success, Amma couldn't escape the shadows of her past. One day, while delivering a speech at a women's empowerment event, she spotted a familiar figure in the audience. Chief Ebuka. He approached her afterward, his face a mask of feigned politeness. Amma, I'm impressed. I didn't think you had it in you. I don't need your approval, she replied, her voice ice-cold. Still so bitter, he said, shaking his head. You've done well for yourself, but don't forget where you came from. You'll always be beneath me. Amma stepped closer, looking him straight in the eye. You took everything from me, uncle. But you didn't break me. I will reclaim what's mine, and when I do, you'll regret underestimating me. His smirk faltered, but he quickly recovered. Good luck, Amma. You'll need it. As he walked away, Amma felt a mix of anger and satisfaction. For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes, a small crack in the facade he had built. A new alliance. That evening, Amma met with Zainab and a new ally, Kofi, a tech expert who specialized in uncovering hidden financial records. Together, they devised a plan to investigate Chief Ebuka's activities. We'll need evidence, Kofi said, tapping on his laptop. Bank records, land deeds, anything that shows his corruption. And we'll need witnesses, Zainab added. People who've dealt with him and are willing to speak out. Amma nodded. Whatever it takes. I'm ready. As they worked late into the night, Amma felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about reclaiming her inheritance, it was about justice, not only for herself but for every woman who had been silenced by tradition and greed. Amma looked at her team, her voice steady and resolute. He may have taken everything from me, but I have something he can never take, my will to fight. And this time, I'm not fighting alone. Amma stood at the window of her modest office, staring out at the bustling streets below. Phoenix Logistics was a far cry from the corporate empire her father had built, but it was hers. It represented not just survival but triumph over adversity. Yet, even with her growing success, the shadow of Chief Ebuka loomed large. Every achievement reminded her of what had been taken and the justice she still sought. The time had come to act, but she knew this battle would require patience, strategy, and unrelenting determination. The first clues. Kofi leaned back in his chair, his laptop screen glowing as he sifted through public records and private data he had skillfully obtained. Your uncle isn't as untouchable as he thinks, he said, glancing at Amma and Zainab, who sat across the table. What have you found? Amma asked, leaning forward. Kofi smirked. A lot. For starters, he's been using shell companies to launder money from illegal land deals. These companies are registered under fake names, but the paper trail leads back to him. Zainab raised an eyebrow. That's enough to build a solid case, but we'll need more. His reputation and connections are his greatest weapons. Amma nodded. Let's dig deeper. We need undeniable evidence, something so strong that no one, not even his allies, can deny it. Over the next few weeks, the trio worked tirelessly. Kofi uncovered more fraudulent transactions, tax evasion schemes, and illegal property acquisitions. Zainab reached out to whistleblowers, former employees and business partners of Chief Ebuka who had been wronged by him. Many were hesitant to speak out, fearing his retaliation, but Amma's determination inspired some to step forward. Strategic alliances. Amma's growing influence in the business world proved invaluable. She began leveraging her connections, forming alliances with influential figures who shared her vision of justice and equality. At a high-profile networking event, she met Mrs. Adebayo, a prominent business magnate known for her philanthropic work. "You've made quite a name for yourself, Amma," Mrs. Adebayo said as they sat in a quiet corner of the room. "Your resilience is admirable." "Thank you," Amma replied, her voice steady. "But there's more to my story. My success is built on a foundation of injustice. My uncle, Chief Ebuka, stole everything my father built. I intend to reclaim it, not just for myself but for every woman who has been silenced by tradition." Mrs. Adebayo's expression hardened. "I've heard of Ebuka. His reputation precedes him, and not in a good way. If you're serious about this fight, you'll need powerful allies." "I am serious," Amma said. "And I'd be honored to have your support." From that moment, Mrs. Adebayo became a mentor and ally, introducing Amma to legal experts, journalists, and activists who could amplify her cause. The network of support grew, bolstering Amma's confidence and strengthening her resolve. The media campaign. Zainab suggested a bold move, taking the fight to the public. "Your uncle thrives in the shadows, using his influence to silence opposition. But if we shine a light on his actions, he won't be able to hide." Amma was hesitant at first. She valued her privacy and feared the backlash that could come with going public. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized the power of the media in exposing injustice. With the help of Mrs. Adebayo's connections, Amma secured an interview with a respected journalist. The televised segment, titled "Inheritance and Injustice: One Woman's Fight for Her Father's Legacy," aired on a popular news channel. Amma spoke candidly about her journey, detailing her uncle's betrayal and the systemic issues that allowed such injustices to persist. The interview went viral, sparking national outrage. Social media erupted with support for Amma, as well as heated debates about inheritance laws and gender inequality. Women from all walks of life shared their own stories of oppression, creating a movement that transcended Amma's personal fight. Ebuka's counterattack. The publicity put Chief Ebuka on the defensive. He dismissed the allegations as baseless and accused Amma of seeking attention. "She's a bitter, spoiled girl who can't accept her place," he declared in an interview, his tone dripping with condescension. Amma watched the clip with a mixture of anger and resolve. "Let him talk," she said to Zainab. "His arrogance will be his downfall." But Ebuka wasn't content to rely on words alone. He used his connections to spread false rumors about Amma, claiming she was involved in illegal activities. He also sent men to intimidate her employees, hoping to cripple Phoenix Logistics. Amma responded swiftly, filing a restraining order and publicly condemning his actions. Her supporters rallied around her, refusing to let Ebuka's tactics derail her mission. The breakthrough. Late one night, Kofi called Amma with excitement in his voice. "Amma, we've hit the jackpot. I found records of a massive offshore account linked to your uncle. The money in it matches the value of the properties he stole from your father." Amma's heart raced. "Are you sure?" "Positive," Kofi replied. "This is the kind of evidence that could destroy him." Zainab reviewed the documents and confirmed their validity. "This is it," she said, a triumphant smile on her face. "With this, we can build an airtight case against him." Amma felt a surge of emotion, relief, vindication, and determination. "Then let's do it. Let's bring him down." The plan unfolds. Amma, Zainab, and Kofi worked with a team of legal experts to prepare their case. They filed lawsuits against Chief Ebuka for embezzlement, fraud, and inheritance theft. The evidence was overwhelming, and the media coverage ensured that the case couldn't be swept under the rug. As the legal battle loomed, Amma felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't experienced in years. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her father's legacy, for her mother, and for every woman who had been silenced by greed and tradition. One evening, as she stood in her office, Amma looked at the framed photograph of her father on her desk. "This is for you, Papa," she whispered. "I won't stop until justice is served." The day had finally arrived. The courtroom was packed with reporters, legal observers, and curious onlookers. The high-profile case of Nwoko versus Chief Ebuka had captivated the nation. It wasn't just about wealth or inheritance anymore. It was about justice, gender equality, and the clash between tradition and modernity in a rapidly changing society. Amma sat at the plaintiff's table, her chin held high. To her left sat Zainab, a picture of calm determination. Across the room, Chief Ebuka exuded his usual arrogance, but there was a faint unease in his eyes, a recognition that the odds were no longer in his favor. The opening salvo. The trial began with Amma's legal team presenting their case. Zainab took the lead, outlining the evidence they had painstakingly gathered: fraudulent land deals, embezzlement of family assets, and offshore accounts linked to Chief Ebuka. Each claim was backed by documents, testimonies, and a clear paper trail. "This case is not just about the theft of wealth," Zainab declared, her voice resonating through the courtroom. "It is about the systemic silencing of women and the abuse of power in our society." Nwoko is not only fighting for her inheritance, she is fighting for justice and the right to stand as an equal in a world that seeks to diminish her. The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement. Amma stole a glance at her uncle, whose confident facade was beginning to crack. Ebuka's defense. Ebuka's legal team attempted to discredit Amma, painting her as a bitter woman seeking revenge. They argued that tradition-dictated inheritance should remain within the male lineage and that Ebuka had merely been fulfilling his cultural duty. "Our client acted in the best interest of the family," his lawyer argued. Amma was young and inexperienced at the time of her father's death. Chief Ebuka stepped in to protect the family's legacy, but their arguments were weak against the mountain of evidence presented by Amma's team. Each document, each witness, each carefully constructed argument chipped away at the foundation of Ebuka's defense. The whistleblower. The turning point came when Mrs. Adama, a former secretary in one of Chief Ebuka's companies, took the stand. She was nervous at first, her hands trembling as she adjusted the microphone. "Mrs. Adama," Zainab said gently, "please tell the court what you witnessed during your time working for Chief Ebuka." Adama hesitated, glancing at Ebuka, who glared at her from across the room. Then she took a deep breath and began to speak. "I witnessed several illegal transactions," she said, her voice steadying with each word. "Chief Ebuka used fake names to register properties that were rightfully owned by the Nwoko family. He also funneled money from company accounts into his personal offshore accounts." Her testimony was damning, corroborated by documents Kofi had uncovered. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. The media frenzy. Outside the courthouse, the trial dominated headlines. News channels broadcast live updates, and social media was abuzz with debates about inheritance rights, gender roles, and the corruption of traditional systems. Women across the country rallied behind Amma, sharing their own stories of being sidelined and oppressed. The trial became a symbol of resistance against a deeply patriarchal society. Amma felt the pressure mounting, but she also felt an overwhelming sense of support. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for countless others who saw their struggles reflected in hers. Ebuka's desperation. As the trial progressed, Ebuka grew increasingly desperate. He attempted to bribe key witnesses, but Zainab had anticipated his moves and had ensured their protection. He even tried to intimidate Amma, sending anonymous threats to her office and home. But Amma refused to be cowed. "He's scared," she told Zainab after receiving a particularly vile message. "He knows he's losing." The threats were reported to the court, further damaging Ebuka's credibility. The judge, a stern but fair man, admonished him publicly. "This court will not tolerate intimidation or obstruction of justice," he warned. Amma takes the stand. The most emotional moment of the trial came when Amma took the stand. She recounted her journey, from the day of her father's funeral to the struggles of rebuilding her life. "My father was a man of integrity," she said, her voice unwavering despite the lump in her throat. "He believed in fairness, justice, and the power of education. He raised me to be strong, to fight for what is right. Chief Ebuka betrayed not only me but also my father's legacy. I am here today because I refuse to let that betrayal go unchallenged." Her words moved the courtroom. Even the judge seemed visibly affected. Ebuka, meanwhile, sat rigidly in his chair, his expression a mix of anger and resignation. The verdict. After weeks of testimony, arguments, and deliberations, the day of the verdict arrived. The courtroom was silent as the judge read his decision. After reviewing the evidence presented, it is clear that Chief Ebuka acted unlawfully and in bad faith. His actions constitute fraud, embezzlement, and a gross violation of inheritance laws. This court hereby rules in favor of the plaintiff, Nwoko. All assets unlawfully seized by the defendant are to be returned immediately, and restitution is to be paid. The room erupted in applause. Amma felt tears streaming down her face as she turned to Zainab and Kofi, who were grinning triumphantly. Chief Ebuka's fate didn't end there. The court recommended criminal charges for his fraudulent activities, ensuring he would face further consequences. The aftermath. As Amma stepped out of the courthouse, she was greeted by a crowd of supporters. Women chanted her name, holding signs that read, "Justice for Amma and equality for all." She addressed the crowd, her voice firm yet emotional. "This victory is not just mine, it's ours. It's a step toward a future where women are treated as equals, where no one is silenced by tradition or fear. I thank you all for your support, and I promise to keep fighting for justice." The crowd cheered, their voices echoing through the streets. Amma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had fought, she had won, and she had honored her father's legacy. The victory in court marked the end of one chapter in Amma's life and the beginning of another. She had reclaimed her inheritance, but more importantly, she had ignited a movement that resonated across the nation. The battle had left scars, emotional and physical, but it also left Amma with a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was far from over. There were others like her, silenced and stripped of their rights, who needed someone to stand with them. Reclaiming the legacy. Amma walked through the gates of her father's estate for the first time in years. The mansion, once bustling with life, was now in a state of disrepair. Overgrown weeds choked the garden her father had loved, and the air was heavy with neglect. Yet, as Amma stood there, she felt a sense of triumph. This was no longer just a building. It was a symbol of resilience. "I told you I'd make it back, Papa," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. She placed her hand on the large oak door and stepped inside, determined to restore not just the house but the legacy it represented. The following months were spent renovating the estate and reorganizing the businesses her father had left behind. Amma poured her energy into rebuilding the family's logistics empire, ensuring it operated with integrity and fairness. She also created new divisions, providing job opportunities for women and underprivileged youth. The foundation for change. With Zainab and Mrs. Adebayo's support, Amma launched the Nwoko Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to empowering women through education, legal support, and entrepreneurship. The foundation quickly became a beacon of hope, offering scholarships, legal aid, and mentorship programs to women across the country. At the foundation's opening ceremony, Amma addressed a crowd of supporters, donors, and beneficiaries. "This foundation is not just about giving back," she said. "It's about creating a society where everyone, regardless of gender or background, has the chance to thrive. We're here to ensure that no woman is ever silenced or robbed of her future." The applause was thunderous, and Amma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The foundation was her way of honoring her father's memory while ensuring that her struggles would pave the way for others. Ebuka's fall from grace. While Amma thrived, Chief Ebuka's world crumbled. After the court's ruling, criminal charges were filed against him for fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. His once loyal allies abandoned him, unwilling to associate themselves with his disgrace. The media covered his trial extensively, portraying him as a symbol of corruption and the consequences of unchecked power. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his reputation shattered beyond repair. For Amma, his downfall wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. One afternoon, she received a letter from Ebuka. It was scrawled and desperate, a plea for forgiveness. Amma read it carefully, then folded it and placed it in her drawer. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she wasn't consumed by hatred either. Her focus was on the future, not the past. A personal journey. As the months passed, Amma found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She had lost so much, but she had also gained strength, resilience, and a sense of purpose. She began speaking at international conferences, sharing her story and advocating for policy reforms to protect women's inheritance rights. During one such event in Nairobi, she met Dr. Kwame Mensah, an economist and activist who shared her passion for justice. Their connection was immediate, and over time, their friendship blossomed into something deeper. Kwame's kindness and unwavering support reminded Amma that healing wasn't just about reclaiming what was lost, it was about opening her heart to new possibilities. A visit to her father's grave. One rainy afternoon, Amma visited her father's grave. The air was cool, and the scent of wet earth filled her lungs. She knelt before the headstone, her fingers tracing the engraved letters of his name. "Papa, I hope I've made you proud," she said, her voice trembling. "I've fought for everything you believed in. I've tried to honor your legacy, to ensure that the values you taught me live on." She closed her eyes, letting the rain wash over her. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of peace. Her journey had been painful and challenging, but it had also been transformative. She had found her strength, her voice, and her purpose. A new dawn. Amma's story became a catalyst for change. Inspired by her journey, lawmakers began revisiting outdated inheritance laws, pushing for reforms that would protect women's rights. The movement she had started grew beyond her, fueled by the voices of countless women who refused to be silenced. As Amma stood on the balcony of her restored estate, watching the sun rise over the city, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. The road had been long and arduous, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. "This is just the beginning," she said to herself, a smile playing on her lips. "The best is yet to come." The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.